Hello, BookTube. We're back with another Castaway, and this is Felicity from My House is a Library. And that's not a lie. Take it away, Felicity.
It's not a lie. Shawn speaks the truth. I have a house. It's my house. I live in it, and the library is also mine, and the books are mine, all of them, all 10,802. I haven't read every. In case you're wondering, no, I haven't read every single one of them. And the whole interesting exercise here today was I only get to bring 8 of the books in my library on this desert island tour, which is partly why I agreed to do this little exercise. It's great. I'm pretty happy to do that. I was sad about the books. I see piles of the ones that were my rejects all around me. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, my house is a library. I am Felicity, and I am for a living. I certainly have to work in order to pay for all these books. I'm a manager at a violin shop. Somewhat misnamed. It's a violin. It's a really beautiful place that is also, we sell violins, and I know a lot about that since I've been doing it off and on since I was in the 9th grade, American style 9th grade. And I did go through a spell where I was training to be a professional musician, and I got pretty far along that path and realized when I was 4 years into being a professional musician that it barely paid the bills, and it certainly didn't buy me any books. So I've figured out other things to do. I did a stint as a programmer, made more money than I've ever made before in my life. And unfortunately, I was doing that when 9/11 struck, and the company I was with couldn't support any programmers anymore, especially newbies like me. So I went back to what I knew before, which was working in a violin shop. And there I am now. Pretty happy doing that. If you got to work, you might as well work at something you like. So,
Definitely.
yeah. That's about the size of it. I mean, I still play. I do lots of things for fun, a few extra things for money, like I did a little stint learning how to be a silversmith, and I do sew. And it's very hard for me to make anything long term unless I can figure out how to make it well enough that somebody would want to pay money, and then they do, and it's not a hobby anymore. So I'm left with the books.
So with your channel, what's the structure of your channel?
I'm not entirely sure yet because I started this at the gentle instigation of Jason Harrigan. He's got a YouTube channel, and Mark Richardson at Richardson Reads. And they said, Felicity, you should really do a BookTube channel. I said, BookTube? Dude, I'm 63. Why would I want to start a YouTube? It's not YouTube, it's BookTube. You just, you talk about your book. So the first one I did, I thought, oh my Lord, this is really lame. And then after I did a couple, I realized I actually kind of like it. And I did one little experimental thing where I played the viola, and I probably won't do that again because, if you're going to do books, do books. If you're going to play, play. Yeah, I pretty much settled into talking about books. I tend to be scattershot because I am a scattershot reader. I mean, all the books all the time doesn't even begin. I have more bookmarks than I have in the books than I have books without them. So I'll start reading one, and then I put it down, and I pick up another one. If you've got that many books, as many books as I have in my library, then you can do that. So yeah, reading is what I do, and so I talk about that on my channel.
And you've whittled this down to 8 books. So
I've whittled this down to 8. Now, I will say that they are pretty chunky books, but it was really sad. And I will say right off the bat, the ones that didn't make it were my complete volume of Ursula Le Guin's The Earthsea trilogy, and the complete works of Shakespeare, and The Lord of the Rings. These are all ones that did not make the cut. Well, they made the cut, but I was not permitted to bring 20. I was only permitted to bring 8. So sorry.
So let's take a look at your first one.
All right. So my first one is, I've had this in my library for a really long time. This is, sorry about the glare. Yeah, you can have glare. You can maybe see both of us. So this is Plutarch's Lives. This is the Dryden translation. John Dryden was a very well-esteemed poet in the long ago. Sorry, I'm not going to do dates. I'm not good with that. But Dryden was one of the first and most important translators of Plutarch. Back when the Greeks and the Romans were beginning to come out of the post-Christian fog, what was left of them after various eradications, to realize that this was really important stuff. And Plutarch, even to this day, strikes us as being very, very modern, because what he does is he takes pre-classical, classical figures that were known to him by legend and by repute. And he takes individual Greeks and Romans, and then he does a comparison. Mostly he's taking people that would have been interesting, so to him that would have been heroic. But there's definitely a few that aren't, and some that are sort of dubious, like Alcibiades. So Plutarch also himself lived in a pretty interesting time. I want to say that it was during the time of Nero, or one of those guys, one of the ones that tended to really chop off the high standing heads. But Plutarch was well loved and not very contentious, and he just kind of sat around tending his garden and writing his books. And so he has two. If you want to call it series, the lives are the ones that we remember because they're pretty lively, and he has a very good insight on human psyche and how people think and how they behave, and how those go together. But he also wrote a whole set that are roughly called the Moralia, which are they're essays. Moralia sometimes, yeah, like, okay, really, you're going to tell me what to do? But they're essays on behavior and ways of living, and some of them are quite pointed and quite interesting. So Plutarch's Lives, this is a big fat chunky book, as are all the rest of the ones on my eight book list. I don't think there's anything much under 800 pages. Well, with this one exception. This one is 1,300 pages of goodness. For me to take with me on this desert island venture. There you go.
Yeah, well, that's a nice addition. Yeah, because that's way at the beginning I thought it was 2 volumes, but I think they might have done it in a 2 volume as well. The Modern Library, but yeah, it's always chopped up every time it's published now. It's never complete like that, and it's a shame. Unless you get a really more academic, I think, translation.
This little guy here was this guy was put out in, I want to say this is actually from quite a while ago, because this is one that I was given by a lady who lived around the block from my parents in the long ago. And so I got this when can't have been more than about 9 or 10, and I'm not that anymore. And she did not have that as a youngster either. So she was a reviewer, really long time ago. She was a reviewer, and so she had a lot of things that she'd been given. This might have been one that she was given to review. Hard to say, but I haven't seen this one either. This is a really sweet addition, and I'm not planning to give it away anytime soon.
Yeah, it's a nice way. You can buy them, but they're expensive now. They're like a lot of old modern libraries. I think it's probably from the 50s. It's probably somewhere early 50s, I think.
I think that would be a very fair assumption, looking at she took really good care of the books, but based on the paper and everything else. So, well, I got it for free. It's a good price.
Yeah, definitely is. Yeah, no, Plutarch is great. So what's next?
All right, so the next one I have not read at all. It came highly recommended. This is A History of Mathematics by Carl Boyer, and the amended by, what's her name was? Oh yeah, so Uta Merzbach. And look, there's a foreword by Isaac Asimov. Fancy that.
Oh wow.
It is. That was a serendipity I just discovered this morning, because this has been sitting on my shelf. Okay, so I mean, I don't buy any books. I don't acquire any books that I don't want. Everything in my library is wanted and loved, but I have 10,802 volumes, and I can't read them all the time, or even look at them. So there you go. That was a lovely surprise. Thank you, Shawn. So this is, as it says, this is A History of Mathematics, and there was 2 other math books that almost made the cut. One was the Code Book, which is a fantastic look at the history of codes from the beginning of time. It's a great book. Also a really tasty one called What is Mathematics? But I looked at, so the Code Book I've already read, and it's great, but I was kind of going on that, like, you know what, I've got this this amount of time on this mythical island, don't know how long I'm going to be there, and I'm going to take this opportunity with no internet and no radio and no contact to read those chunky books that require you to actually think and not have 50 other wonderful books to distract you. So this has been on my list to delve into for a while. So thanks, Shawn. Let me know when the plane's leaving for the desert. But this is a history of mathematics from the very beginning. So this is really, really good. And he's a good writer. It's really well put together. It's got illustrations. So the ones at the beginning, Mesopotamia. So, illustrations like, oh yes, I know what that is. That is a parallelogram, or not. No, sorry, that is a rhomboid. Sorry,
yeah.
Words, whatever. So
does it have too many equations in?
No, it doesn't, and that's the other reason. So what is mathematics did, and I decided that, maybe since paper. Hint, hint. Paper is not my luxury item that I'm bringing with me, and I don't feel like writing in the margins of my books or hiding a pencil in whatever. I decided that I was going to get books that I did not actually have to puzzle through annotations or like Archimedes write it in the sand. So, but there's a lot of really nice artifacts in here. There's a little bit. There's a couple little sort of temptations there. But he gets all the way through to the last chapter. He gets into integration of functional analysis and general topology. And I think it ends somewhere in the mid 20th century. So it doesn't go to now, but it goes far enough for me. I'm not a mathematician.
Well, that's why I always found when you pick up books like that and you open it up and you have equations, lines, and it makes my head hurt just looking at it.
Oh, look, A plus B. I can do that. When they start with the supersets and the super numbers and those hub numbers, I'm lost. I'll look at it and say, gosh, what a clever thing. So yeah, this is number 2 on my desert island selection. All right. Number 3?
Yeah.
Moving right along. All right. So number 3 is Jacques Barzoon's From Dawn to Decadence. And I love his writing. I have a much smaller work. Like I said, so that previous one was 1,300 pages. And this one is, 848. So I have his Berlioz book, which I read because when I was doing my stint as a music student at the conservatory, I read lots and lots of books that were semi-literary, semi-whatever on music. So and I realized then what a really excellent writer Barzoon is. But this is a historical survey. I love history, and I have a lot of books that are general history, some of which I've read, some of which are waiting. This one's been waiting for a while. So I think that Desert Island seems like the perfect opportunity to read it. So when he says Dawn to Decadence, he begins, he actually begins not at the dawn of time, but more like the dawn of what we would see as the defining episodes that tell us what we are today, 500 years. Yeah. So not back down to, say, the primitive man, or even back down to as far as say, the Greek and Roman cultures, which do influence a lot of what we do, our language and our literature and culture and everything else. But the last 500 years kind of takes us back to Renaissance, when what we know of today, we recognize a lot of their tools. I mean, I'm in the violin business, and you look at the tools in the workshop where I am, and Stradivarius, 250 years ago would definitely recognize 80% of the tools in them, and probably from earlier than that. So this is where this begins, is the roots of our modern culture, our modern civilization, Western civilization. So, and he's a really good writer. So I think I could stand to take this one.
Yeah, no, I read that. I don't know, it must be 30 years ago, and I loved it, and I think I've read it twice, at least.
I gotta catch up with you.
but it's great because he is such a great writer, and it's one of these writers that when they take this chunk of history, it's not just sort of dates. He has this thought process that he goes almost to, I guess that's the right thing that I'm thinking of, is the way he goes through it, and he picks out stuff. It's a very personal view of his history as well, I think, and
I also really appreciate his. I mean, he's a professional historian as well. I mean, I'm assuming because his information is spot on. But what I appreciate is the same kind of writing style that I find in, say, Barbara Tuchman, where you have somebody who is the master of their information and the master of their field, but they're presenting this information to you, the reader, as something that they want you to be interested, not in like, look at me being all profound and clever and academic, and if you don't understand, tough beans, right? This is the Jacques Barzun, Tuchman, even people like H.G. Wells, or the wacky thing that I'm trying to read right now. It's all meant for normal, ordinary people like me to get an understanding and to sort of like broaden our perspective, or get some kind of another feeling for other things that were going on, or to explain things that we think we know really well. That's great stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, well, there's another one that sort of, I think, I don't know if they were contemporaries or not, but I just saw someone haul it on a used history books, and it was Ferdinand Braudel. His stuff is really good. The Mediterranean. There's a 2-volume Mediterranean history, and it's really, really good. And it's like that too. It encompasses. I can't even find the correct words to explain it. It's not just history by itself, but as you say, it's a personal, the way it's written, and it brings you right into it, and it's like there's a thought that goes through it. It's not just a chunk here, a chunk there. There is a thought throughout.
And I think that it's really difficult. I think it's really difficult, and I don't think that the academic historians in the main are able to do that, because they're still locked into the blocks of time. This happened in this time. This happened the next decade. It takes a very special kind of super intelligence to be able to say, yes, I see the timeline. I have it sitting there. It's on my study wall, and I'm looking at that. But what I'm also looking at is this idea of it didn't go this way. It went this way, and it went this way, and it kind of went back. And if you happen to be in Spain or in Italy when these things were happening, it was happening at a different rate. It's fascinating. So
yeah, no, it is, and good writers. I like that. It's like I don't have that stuff anymore, and I just wish I'd love to have a little bookcase, and I think that's all I would need, is a small bookcase with a few select ones.
You want to be careful with that, Shawn. That little bookcase, it goes like, whoops! It's called Mission Creep. Seriously,
I would give it a try. I if I failed, I failed.
But it would be such a glorious failure. Ah, yes, the little bookcase is now the entire wall.
Yeah.
Been there, done that. Yeah. Okay. Shall I move on to book number 4?
Yeah, I'm just turning off my phone here because I don't want any more interruptions.
Okay, I already did that. I was ready for you an hour ago, because I'm going to be right on time. It says, oh, wait, be ready at any moment. It's great stuff. This is my first introduction to dual videos. This is great. So yeah, number 4 is, oh, look at that, another dip into the past, The Anatomy of Melancholy by Robert Burton. And I'm going to read the little blurb here is actually enchanting. And yeah, I knew what it was before I started, but I needed a little encouragement to kind of like, you can't just dip your toes in this water. You've got to plunge in head first and hope that you have a breathing apparatus. Yeah. So this is the cover blurb. I think it's great. On December 5th, 300 and more years ago, in his study at Christ Church, Oxford, a curious, middle-aged scholar wrote the last lines of one of the most entertaining and amazing books in the world. It is a sort of literary cosmos, an omnium gatherum, I love that word, a compendium of everything that caught the fancy of the scholar who lived in an unspecialized age. Poetry, medicine, morbid psychology, philosophy, old wives' tales, philology, wars, antiquarian lore, theology, morals, history, climatology, travel, food, love, hate, ambition, pride, astrology, art, politics, and a scheme for the establishment of utopia. All these and more are poured forth helter-skelter by this 17th century reckoner of human frailties in a style abounding in quaint conceits and hundreds of rare excerpts and quotations. The Anatomy is one of the most comfortable books that ever graced a library, as entrancing as Rabelais or its own stepchild, Tristram Shandy. The bed book par excellence that delighted and influenced Dr. Johnson, Milton, Sterne, Keats, and Lamb, a source of incomparable literary delight, as he who reads will find. Who needs to say any more?
Yeah, well, that's wonderful.
And this is a lovely edition. The paper is actually really very tasty in it. I got it actually for an incredibly ridiculously low price at Bose, considering that it's just it was in perfect shape. This particular one was published in 1927, and you wouldn't know to look at the pages that it's pre-World War II. It's just a really, really nicely printed book. Very happy to have it. Finally, extremely glad to have read it. And it's going to go on the desert island with me, because even though I read it, I would say probably 2 out of every 5 words just flew right over my head, especially when he references one of the 30 pages of names of classical writers and thinkers that he must have read. Because I read somewhere that that he had some 1,700 volumes in his personal library, not including whatever was in the Christchurch library that he would, that he'd be able to access. But I mean, we're talking the 17th century. We're talking 1,700 books when a book probably cost a month's wages or more. Yowza. Yeah. So that's pretty astounding.
I should have dug it out. It's behind.
Do you have a copy?
Well, I've got a copy of that, but I've got a copy of a study of his library.
Oh, now that I'd like to see.
Yeah. When we're finished, I'll see if I can find it. I'll see if I can find it. It's fabulous. But yeah, no, I love it. It's like I've got a 3-volume set that I bought when I moved to England here, and I haven't reread it yet. There's a new Penguin translation. I think Screech. Was it Screech that did it? M.A. Screech.
That sounds like the contemporary one. Yeah, this one was I forget who did this one, but yeah, I think he's got to be the new one. This guy here was well, the part that's translated So it just says edited by Floyd Dell, Paul Jordan Smith, B.A. B.D., sometime fellow of the University of California. So I don't know who did the translation of this one.
Yeah, a lot of times they didn't put it in. Yeah. But the new one, the reason why I want to get that one too, the Penguin one, is because you mentioned Rabelais in that, and Rabelais is, I love Rabelais. I just reread him for the 4th time, I think. And talking about the lists, and yeah, it's just Rabelais is absurd lists. Well, mostly absurd.
Yeah, mostly.
But Burton's it's very interesting, because he was writing all this stuff, I think, at the time where science was just starting. So he had, like I say, all the antiquarian, the old stuff, like, people got ill. It's the bad humors in their body, Yeah. He still had the old world, sort of old time way, but it was right on the cusp. And I think even by the time it was published, it almost was passé, in a sense, to think of it that way.
Yeah, because we're starting to look the likes of Newton and Hooke and the other people who were geniuses, absolute geniuses in their own right, who were specialists. They still had that kind of like that backward leaning. We wrote our math book in Latin, right? And we're experts on these different things, and we're also the director of the Mint, and we have this expertise in optics. But you can't match me in calculus or whatever it was. Whereas in Bernstein, it was still that was the end of his life, and he was, as they point out, the last of the unspecialized men, and he represents what I wanted to be when I was a very, very young person, which was a Renaissance man. I'm not a man, but a Renaissance person, and realized very, very quickly that was not a possible thing to be in that day, which was the mid 20th century. That's me. Not possible. Increasingly not possible to be a Renaissance anything, because there's too much to know. unless you want to go off to a desert island and just restrict yourself to the bits you took with you. Oh yeah, thank you.
But yeah,
so when's the plane leaving for this tour?
could be a boat. It could be a boat. It could be a ship or a boat.
You're right.
But yeah, no, the Renaissance man. That's interesting because like it's. I've read a book that was arguing who was the last Renaissance man. You know, and it was an argument, I think, mostly between Richard Francis Burton and or Thomas Jefferson. It was sort of a toss up between them. But Burton obviously was later, so it was probably still almost possible.
That'd be a really complicated choice too, because once you start adding in a global perspective, oh look, I can sail halfway across the world, and there's this other place. And having said halfway, well, then the other half is not that surprising anymore. So suddenly you have millions of new pieces of data to include in with it. And already by that time, there were major explorations discovering the natures of different plants and the specialization of breaking them into plant families and all those other things. It's just, I don't know, Leonardo da Vinci, whatever. I know. Well, that was who was in my head as being the last Renaissance man.
Yeah, well, that's why I say it was sort of a almost a fictitious argument, but it was interesting to read. It was like an extended essay. And another thing about books that you were talking about plants and everything, it just reminded me of Columbus's son, who wanted to make a universal library, but he also plants. He also wanted to have all the plants in one area too, in a garden.
A noble, heroic, and doomed effort, but noble. And I think that that's the kind of person that I probably actually see myself as somebody who becomes mired in the impossible lists of the things that you realize then would be required in order to become that super over specialized, the person who has no specialty, and the list would grow until they suffocate you, until they kill you, because the list in, say, even, well, not Columbus, but a little bit before Columbus, were quite manageable.
Yeah.
Those lists were not, they were big, but they were not tremendous. And now I can't even make a list of the books in my library without kind of having my eyes boggle. Actually.
Yeah. It's like, where do you put it? It's like there's so many areas that you could put it on. And that's the one thing I do like is seeing how people, the books that they put on the shelf side by side, and it's always unique to each person if they do, unless just throwing up in the order you got them. But if you subdivide things, why have you subdivided that? And you've got these two books together. I wouldn't put those two together, but you have, or they have, and that fascinates me.
Well, now that's a really interesting little rabbit hole you're about to kind of dive into there, Shawn. Are you sure you want to go down that one? Because that's something that troubles me. It doesn't trouble me. I look at my library and I say, I've got this much space. If I compacted everything just that much more, could I put another shelf in, and what would go there? So there is a certain amount of sizism in my library. Okay, this shelf is this height. These are the books that are going to go there. And I have more fiction than I do anything else. I'm very, very strong fiction reader, and a lot of mass market paperbacks. That makes it easier. But so there are a few weird cheap by Giles in my library. Not quite Warburgian yet.
The size is Samuel Pepys' style. To fit
in. But I'm sorry, Samuel Pepys had a different one. One comes in, one goes out, and I'm not there.
Yeah, he had a, what was it, 6,000 and something?
I thought it was something like 3,000 or something like that.
Yeah, it was a finite number.
It was like 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000, and he had those magnificent cases, which still exist, built exactly to his specifications, and he arranged all these books. Man, what an OCD guy. So he had the little guys in front and the big guys in back, and they all had to line up exactly the same at their various heights. And if the books were not quite the same height, then he made little blocks.
Yes.
Oh my God.
It's amazing.
I like to read about them. I don't think I would have liked to have known him very well.
But it was like a ship timber that he made his bookcases or book presses.
They're glorious. I've got a wonderful book by Henry Petrosky in my library. It's called The Book on the Bookshelf. I think it's
Yes,
and it's actually it's right. It's the study of the shelves, because we think of the books, but what are they sitting on? It's invisible to us. We see all these books, these beautiful books looking at us, but the shelves are what they're sitting on. So that was the history of the shelves, and Pepys Cases made a very, very strong presence in the book. That's great. I should probably move some of these out of the way, because man, these piles, I have a library table here and there's still not enough room for all my chunkers here. All right, so shall I move on to number 5
before we diverge forever?
I know. Listen, there's more rabbit holes than there are rabbits.
Yes.
Yeah, probably. Okay, so number 5 is one that I've been meaning to read for a while, and look at that. Asimov rears his head. It's not ugly, it's a great head. Asimov's Guide to Shakespeare by Isaac Asimov. And this is a genuine chunker, but it's actually not as many pages. It's about 800 pages, give or take. And so Shakespeare's complete works was going to make the cut. I have it, and then I realized, no, I've already read most of them, and some of them I've studied, in school, and so they're not unknown to me. This is completely unknown to me, and I love Asimov, and Asimov actually is in many places in my library because of the whole size thing. And I thought, somebody gave this to me. They were disposing of a whole bunch of books, and so of course I took it. I did have to take a few things that I didn't quite want, and then those have gifted other places, but this one was one I wanted, and I've dipped into it from time to time, and I realized Asimov wasn't just a storyteller. He wasn't just a mathematician. He wasn't just a roboticist. He also was a pretty significant historian, because in each one of his dissertations here on the plays or the poems, I think actually he does just about everything, is he will give little historical perspectives on what's going on in the play, not just the language. Yeah, the language too, but oh my, I'd really like to have some uninterrupted time when I'm not being distracted by myself to read this. Yeah, great to work it through with each individual play, but I would almost be more fun just to read this from end to end. So there you go. Asimov's Guide to Shakespeare is number 5 on my desert island list.
Yeah, I there's no secret that I like Asimov.
And you cannot tell a lie.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's a great one, because you mentioned the poems. He did a commentary or an annotation of two. He did Don Juan, and he did another one, and I can't remember which one. I've never seen those books.
Oh my goodness!
And I found this out by reading his massive memoirs, and so that was interesting. He talks about writing that because he wrote all these. He did ancient Egypt, Rome, Greece, Europe, and England, and he recycled everything that he used. Like he would use it for multiple things. And he was
one of my other heroes, J.S. Bach. When you get a good theme, why throw it away? Use it again.
Yeah, that's what he did. He would recycle. He would cannibalize something that may never have got published, and then he'd cannibalize it into other things. It's just quite fascinating. And somebody came in before and saw all these encyclopedias, dictionaries, and on various subject history and everything, and saw what he was doing. And they were saying, "Oh, all you're doing is just reading and putting all this stuff together." Yeah, but you do it. You do it.
Yeah, like the story about the plumber, right? Guys, pipes are burst and leaking water all over the place, and he calls the plumber, in the middle of the night. The guy comes out and he kind of like scratches his head and he looks at the pipe and he takes a little nut and he sticks it on there and he closes it off and he says, "That'll be, $100. And the guy says, "What? $100? You just took a 5-cent nut and put it on." He said, "Yeah, I knew which nut and I knew where to put it."
Yeah.
I'll be $100, please.
Yeah, and that's the way Asimov was. He was a generalist in many ways, and like he was a biochemist by training and taught for a little while in Boston. But yeah, he just and still people they're not academic. Like they're clearly not academic. They're general. And he was working obviously before the days of internet where you could, if you wanted the information on X, like like his essays on what's the book? I'm not sure it's The Intelligent Man's Guide to Science, but there's another one where they're little bios. They're like 1,000-word bios of scientists.
I may have seen that, but I don't have that. I
Yeah.
don't have that in my library.
Yeah. But it's lovely, because the thing is, today it's Wikipedia that everybody goes to, but it won't have the flair of Asimov. It won't have his sometimes off-color sense of humor,
Right.
but it's you'll miss that personality from yes, you'll get the information, but you won't get the personality behind
the other thing that's actually oh, look, another rabbit hole. Fancy that. Is the internet rabbit hole. The internet is the info rabbit hole. And I was just doing my little Umberto Eco thing, because of course he's a big hero of mine, and he has one which is how to write a thesis, and that was a very early publication, and the picture on it's great. It's got a typewriter, and it's got it's in Courier font. Remember Courier from the olden days, right? So when he wrote his little dissertation on how to write a thesis, you would go to a library and you would find out your information in books, and you would look in a card catalog and you would find out what books you wanted. And if the book wasn't there in your library, you would write to the other library. I think I mistakenly said in that video, I'm gonna look, I can say Bologna. He taught in Bologna, not in Milan. So you'd go to the Bologna University Library, and you couldn't find it. So you'd send off to Milan or to Rome, or some special dispensation, and you had to wait for the book. It wasn't just something you could like go into Wikipedia and go like, hey, look, hey, some dude out there put this thing here, for better or worse, right or wrong, here it is. So he said, and then you would gather this hard-won information, and you would carefully annotate where you found it, what was the book, how many pages, what page was it on, who was the publisher, when was it published, the quote that you're needing, and all those things. And you would have these little index cards, and you had a huge box or boxes full of them, and then you would color code them or do whatever you did, so that when you finally wrote your thesis, you would have all your research there. So he had updated it. He'd redone it, I think, many decades later for the internet time, and said, well, yeah, you can do the same thing with a database, but you have to be just as meticulous, and you have to be even more careful, because the information that you get for free on the internet, sometimes you get exactly what you pay for. So there you go.
The other downside of it.
The information that Asimov got, yes, the book could be wrong too, but anybody who goes to the trouble and expense of actually publishing a book is going to go through a few more hoops and a few more checks before it actually gets printed. So what you're reading, you get that one chance to read that book, but when you read it, you probably have a little bit more source information than the guy reading it on Wikipedia.
You'd think that would be the case all the time, but there is a book called The Founding that it's speaking of Asimov comes up in it. It's a history of golden age science fiction. John W. Campbell and Robert A. Heinlein, who's a Scientology guy.
Yeah, the one that I won't read. L.
Ron Hubbard.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, and
did you like him? Sorry, I'm cutting off this video. Just kidding.
Some of his early science fiction is okay. So I you want it before he went insane. Let's put it that way.
I'll buy that.
No, actually, scratch that. He was always insane. But anyway, the book that I'm talking about is there's so many errors in it. There's so many factual errors in this, and it was published just a few years ago. And I did a video on it just because I had to re-look at it again. I read it before Christmas, and I looked at it again, and I just couldn't believe the things that this guy was doing. And also too, he was skewing none of these people were saints. Let's put it that way. Nobody is saints at any time. They have their flaws, but if all you do is talk about their flaws, it does give you a biased and a skewed view of them. And I think that's what his aim was. Right. But the thing is, it was just so many, and this is just the casual reading I went through, and I must have found like 20 or 30 errors
Well, so then I should rephrase my last statement. Okay, so maybe sorry. So yeah, back to so maybe what I should have been saying is that yes, if you want to research or find out something about a particular area, you're probably better off starting with the source material, and then you can't just take it like the you can't you're right, you can't just take it like the word of God or the Wikipedia or the internet or anything. It's just that when you go to a library and actually do the physical exertion of getting the book, sitting down there, paging through the thing and looking at it and spending the time, you're more likely to have it internalize more. You're probably maybe a little bit more likely to have like some critical faculties.
Yeah.
Does that really happen? Wait, didn't I read that in somebody else's book that's over there, where he says something different? Well, I'm going to look at them side by side, and
yeah, and you follow up the sources too, right. and that's the thing, and
you get lazy with the internet. You get lazy with Wikipedia. I read it online. This is how you do rocket science. I can do brain surgery. So I read how to do it on YouTube.
Yeah, no, it's just, but like the thing is with Asimov though, I'm pretty sure, like anytime, like at least in his memoirs, anytime he found out he made an error, he was beating himself up over it. Like even the smallest little things,
because he was a really smart guy and he didn't like making mistakes.
He said he finally met someone that was smarter than him, and it was Carl Sagan.
Oh, I have some Carl Sagan in my library. I like him a lot. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we got back onto Asimov there. Okay, let's
rabbit hole. Okay, so I'm going to move on to book number next. All right. So speaking about rabbit holes, this is a really fun one. I've got a lot of Taschen books in my library because they do the best picture books ever, and they will not hurt your pocketbook too much. So this is one. This was kind of a whim by. I mean, I find it a little hard to pass up Taschen, but this one was definitely kind of poking at some little itches that I had. Was like, okay, symbols, not occultism so much as symbology and design and what's behind and what's the meaning of different things, like just anything from the beginning of the cosmos. So okay, alchemy. Did I say alchemy yet? Yeah, alchemy. So there's definitely some influences there. It's got a lot of really great pictures. And the organization that did this, ARAS, which is the Archive for Research and Archetypal Symbolism, they apparently have a website, which I did go to and realize you needed to maybe pay money to get at the bazillion more pictures and references they had. And I decided this was enough for me. I mean, I've barely even touched it. I'll dip in and there'll be, let's see if I can do a little show and tell. Okay, so
I'm here for the pictures for this book. So yeah.
Yeah, so this one. So you'll go and the human body. You have the hand. You have everything possibly else that you could have, but then you'll have there's the hand. Okay, birds. So a lot of it. So there's going to be classical references. There's a thing about the little text. The text is informative, but there's less text than there are pictures, and the pictures are going to there's a pretty strong symbolic level to them. So yeah, there's a dove, right? So let me see. Did I say alchemy? I did say alchemy, didn't I? So yeah, there's a little alembic there. So so the book it's arranged cosmologically. So you go from the very biggest things. From creation and cosmos. Oh, yeah, all right. So, okay. Yeah, you go from the beginning, from the big picture down to the very smallest atomic level, and then you get to fantasy. So, like a spirit world, and then I mean everything can be considered a symbol. Here's one. It's called silence. So the pictures are very, very, very widely spread. There's a lot of classical images. There's some weird ones, but every single one was chosen probably with quite a lot of thought. There's a lot of editors and contributors to this particular volume. There's a lot of very, very concrete material things, and there's a lot of very not material, very sort of theoretical is the wrong, but symbolic ideas, idea kind of things. And buddies have found a picture for every single one. And this is one of those ones, you sit in your corner, okay, or you sit in your reclining chair, okay, so it's the middle of the night, okay, so you either have tea, or if it's past tea time, you have a little, scotch or whatever, sitting there, and you're just kind of like dipping in. I've got a sort of a dipping in corner over by the Loeb Library, which again you can't see because it's off to the side there, with a little rocking chair and a little cart and a little place with could hold a cup of tea or whatever, and you just sit there and look at all the books. You can't really fall asleep there, but you can certainly, so that I got distracted myself. There you go. So I have a lot of little areas in my library I can sit and hide and read. And so this is going to be that book. Even though it's a desert island, I'm sure find a little kind of cozy corner in the sand to sit in and check it out.
It has notched pages there too, which I really like.
So each of those notches goes to a big subsection, like human world. So it starts off blue. Blue is creation and cosmos, and where the colors get more and more concrete. So then we get the plant world. It's green. The animal world is kind of a grayish color. Human world is orange, and the spirit world is sort of foggy. So it's got a ribbon. It's Taschen. Taschen just does. They do wonderful books. Maybe I'll do a YouTube on my Taschen collection sometime. It'd have to be like several different ones because I've got tons.
I've never seen that one, so that's really cool. That's why I wanted to see the picture.
This is just it's so tasty. This is the back cover, and it's pretty chunky, and it's got some pages in it. I've got 800. Not a thing under 800 pages. They'd have all been, so but the pages are, it feels really thick, but the pages are really high quality. So you don't feel like you're going to have to be careful when you're turning them that you're going to rip anything. They're really.
Well, I can see by now if Jason Harrigan doesn't have it, he's writing down or he's ordering.
Well, turnabout is fair play because every time I see one of his, I filled up a page with notes on other books I need to find. So there.
If he doesn't have it, he'll have it soon.
And I'm looking around the corner here because I'm actually down below where it's a little bit, the heavy books are. I've got all my jewelry books in one section, and then I'm looking down there going like, there's a bunch of my Taschen books down there. Oh yeah, you can't see it. Sorry.
Well, we'll definitely do a series of
them. Okay, fine. I'll do a Taschen. I've done Umberto Eco. I'll do a Taschen one. Did I just say Umberto Eco? I did. I just said Umberto Eco. Can't see that. Book number 7 is, the only question was which Echo was I going to choose, and I chose Foucault's Pendulum. So, as I mentioned in my previous little video, booktube video, that I have 34 volumes by Umberto Eco in my library, and some of them I have not read. Some of them I have tried a few times to read, and I am in complete awe of his incredible erudition and brilliance. But there is definitely the ones on semiotics that are just past my current understanding. I plan to live for another 350 years, and by then I may actually understand what's going on. But his essays are brilliant and wonderful, and his novels are nonpareil. I actually decided, for the purposes of the Desert Island, because actually I have a couple of really favorite Eco novels. Baudolino, Name of the Rose are two that kind of spring right to mind. But Foucault's Pendulum requires a bit more thinking, and it's also a lot more convoluted, in some ways more convoluted than Name of the Rose. Name of the Roses was more exotic because it had Latin, and it was from a distant time, and it was also more direct. It's a murder mystery. That's a really good one. I'm not going to say anything in case there's some poor schlub out there that hasn't read Name of the Rose yet. Right? Is that you? Yeah. Sorry, I take that back.
Sorry, I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
All right, so Foucault's Pendulum it's pretty much got everything in it. You got to be on your toes because the premise right away. The premise is there's these two book guys that they have nothing better to do, so they create this document. They create this book that's this compendium of of lies. It's fantastic, and it's a it's a fake cult. I mean, who hasn't wanted to write the book of the book of the beast or the book of the damned or whatever, and say, I'm just making it all up as I go along, but it's going to be
Dan
the
Brown.
best secret society ever. Except,
It-
unfortunately, after they published it, is that people took it serious. Somebody took it seriously, and people started dying, and stuff started happening because they kept getting these letters saying, so how did you find out the secret? Yeah, what secret was that? And of course, the whole the superstructure, the skeleton of it is the Kabbalah. Yes, there you are. So really, there's what's not to like about Foucault's pendulum. It's just it's a work of genius, and it's incredibly well done, and it's creepy, and it's amazing, and it's well written, and you can sometimes laugh in it, but you have to stay on your toes because it is just full. Not full like, hey, let me cram some more erudite stuff in there, but full with just everything that was pouring out of his head because his head was full of stuff. I think this would probably be all right for me for the desert island. I think I'd be able to survive with this. I'd probably end up by making a pencil out of burned charcoal or whatever and scribbling notes and all the margins. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. I'll just buy another copy.
Yeah, as I said to Jason when we did ours, I still got to read that. I have to read that. I have not read it. Yeah, I've not read it.
I won't tell you how it ends then, shall I?
No, but that's what I was saying, like, somebody making up stuff, and I was saying, like, Dan Brown sort of comes to mind.
Yeah, but you know what?
Not near as good.
He did it better. Yeah. This is everything. So everybody has their own style, and even when I started reading Pynchon, and I realized, okay, I the first two I read, I said they couldn't be more different, and then the more Pynchon I read, I realized no, Pynchon is always Pynchon, and the more Eco novels that I read, the more I realized that he has a very distinct style that he was developing, and it's him. Can't mistake it for anybody else, and it's like reading Anatomy of Melancholy. I just wish that I was roaming through his 40,000 volume library, or even Burton's 1,700 volume library of amazing things. Just it's that concentration of thought and concentration of will and scholarly endeavors and looking at the world and not being in your ivory tower and not living in the bubble, but just kind of accepting the world and kind of doing something with it that's yourself. It's really, it's work genius.
Have you seen, there's a YouTube video of him walking through, and it's like, when's it gonna end?
You should mention that on my phone. My phone allows me to have all these like little browser sessions, and so I have a whole. This was actually before I even was doing YouTube. If I thought that was like the work of the devil or whatever, and I have on my phone. I can go back and I can look at my library thing catalog, which is how I know what I've got. And then one of the very first items there is the video of Umberto Eco walking through his library. And we have good days and we have bad days, and sometimes you just need to walk with Umberto through his library one more time, and kind of everything's okay again. So yeah, I know that one really well.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's better than walking through my library because. Oh no, it's about this. It's just he has more books than I do.
but it's so winding. Like he goes through, and I'm going, when's this gonna end?
And you're kind of like winding around. You get into the last one, and he's gone to the shelf, and there's all these books like with nothing but the back side showing. So he goes, he's in the last shelf, and he looks at it, and he's like, he looks at it, and he goes, and then he walks off. Oh my God, that last little head, and I'm like, that's the one. Yeah. Out of all the 40,000 volumes. Oh my Lord. What a great video. Yeah, I know it. All right, so last book. There we go. And this is the closest thing I have to comfort reading that I included here. Is I've read most of these. This is Borges' collected fictions. And I haven't read all of them, I'm pretty sure, but I've read most of them, and some of them I've read many times. Library of Babel, was it Tlon? I never know how to pronounce it. I have to be looking at Tlon Upart or Orbis Tertius. I love Borges. He was such an amazing writer, and such an amazing writer despite his life and his blindness. And you don't really get the feeling that he was bewailing and crying about his life or anything during his life. He just did what he had to do and wrote this work. I have his collected poetry, which is phenomenal. That's a little sad. Phenomenal. His collected nonfiction and fiction. I'm sure there's better translations than this out there, but this is the one I got, and I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm taking that with me. Yeah.
I'm more familiar with his poetry. I've read a few of his short stories, and again, it's like so many things that I want to get back to people like that, and I want to, delve a little more deeper into his writing.
His poetry is beautiful, unbelievable. Again, so the chair of which I spoke earlier, that corner, there's one side of that is the shelves, is the lobe and my books on books, and then the other corner of that is my poetry library, and I just sit there and I'll just I've got all the poetry there, and I'll just like pull a book off the shelf. And I think one evening I just pulled off Borges, and I'm reading it. It has the Latin, or it's the Spanish on one side, and the English on the other. And so you can kind of follow along, because Spanish is also a Romance language, and you don't know everything, but then try to say it out loud to yourself. It's gorgeous. I was going to say it's poetry, but it is. It's just beautiful.
Well, that's that. I need to get a volume that has both, and I love that. When I get poetry, this
edition is the one I was going to get up, but you know what? That's actually like really rude. I was going to get up and walk over and get it, but maybe I'll do a booktube video on Borges. Yeah, well, if I live for the next 350 years, I'd have time to do all the booktube videos, wouldn't I?
You can show every book that you have.
All right, so those are my 8 books. There you are. So right. I have to move them around because they're starting to heat up. The library table is great because I can put my laptop. It's running off the internet. It's an old one, and it kind of heats up a little bit. My books are getting warm. Oops. Yeah. All right. So there we go. So then there's the recording issue, isn't there?
Yeah. So we'll call it music.
Thank you. All right. So Sean's being to you guys out there, Sean's being very cooperative and obliging and flexible, because I said I did have a conventional recording if my first choice was unacceptable, and my choice of recording would be Glenn Gould playing the complete 48 Preludes and Fugues by Bach, and it is not my instrument. I play the piano. I can play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and I can play Anna Magdalena Bach, the minuet. That's about it. But Glenn Gould is one of my favorite performers. He's a kind of a desert island kind of guy. He was living in his own world, really. You would know, wouldn't you? He's Canadian. Yeah. Phenomenal pianist, and don't mind the humming, don't mind all that hoo-ha. I've never heard anybody play Bach that spoke to me personally closer than Glenn Gould. So if I was not permitted my first choice, this was going to be my second choice.
Well, by the time this goes up, Glenn Gould shows up at least 2 more times previously with the Goldberg variation. It's no surprise, because by the time this gets aired, they'll have seen those. So I the Goldberg variations. I thought, but this one, I studied these in one of the classes that I was in school. Not all of them. I mean, I studied them to look at and theorize and analyze, certainly not to play. I might have tried to play the first one, and my teacher said, give yourself another 10 years. You might have the first page of that down. Whatever. I'm not a pianist. I'm a violinist and violist. And so my first choice was, so it's the 6 unaccompanied suites for cello by J.S. Bach, transcribed for the viola, which is my instrument. And you can see this book is really, really, really beat up. And this is my study copy. And this one has markings from at least
at least 3 different professors that I've studied with and my own markings. It says turnout page, doesn't it? Because memorization is absolutely not anything that I'm any good at all. So on my final senior recital, you're supposed to actually present everything except your sonata. You're supposed to present it by memory. And my teacher said, you know, Felicity, you're doing fine. We're going to pass you. Just, you know, don't screw up and you can use the music. So it's my recording, right? So this is you think that I would have most of it by heart. The Sixth Suite, I don't. The Sixth Suite is really hard. I performed 3 of them. 2 for my recitals and 2 for my juries, my exams, and 1 for actual performance. And this is sort of like the Shakespeare for me for the viola, because if I had one book that if I was one piece of music that I was gonna take and learn or play or remember to keep my chops up on my instrument, this is what I would take. And of course, I think permission was granted because I introduced my luxury item, right? Right. So my luxury item. So thank you. Oops. Oh, sorry. There's a little piece of detritus here on my screen. Get out of the way. So, and look, here's my luxury item. It's called a viola. Okay, it's bigger than my head. So this is my instrument, and yeah, and it's got okay, that is a case. It is. I know you can't see that it's got a viola. It's a case, and it has a viola, a bow, a shoulder rest, a cake of rosin, a pencil. We won't talk about the pencil, will we? It's got a pencil in there. All the things that I need to do to actually, you know, make music happen. So this is music happening. And actually, I do have a YouTube video that I did, my one little experimental one where I played one of those guys, and you couldn't see, but in the background, I had that music sitting on my music stand. And yeah, so thank you. If it's all right by you, Shawn, I'll take my Bach.
And I'll put the link to that video down in the.
Oh, thanks. I totally understand. It's had the least number of hits of any of mine because probably people saw it and were like, I'm sorry, that's not a book. Who are you kidding? It's somebody trying to play the viola. All right. There.
No,
so now sorry.
No, I was just saying that's fabulous. I really loved your choices there, like all of them. The math one, I'm still a little uncertain of because I'm still thinking there's going to be equations in there somewhere that will hurt my head.
I tell you what, I'll do a YouTube video on it. And with, so this is awful. A lot of you guys, I mean, I've got more YouTube videos that I can do in a month of Sundays, and I work full time.
That's the next thing to ask. What do you have upcoming on your channel now?
Well, I was actually going to do a reading this afternoon of an absolutely hilarious little number that I was reading in my current. I've got my July TBR includes a lot of forest of bookmarks, and one of them is Stanislaw Lem's Imaginary Magnitudes, which is a set of introductions to books that were never written. Already you can say, yeah, that's genius. So I just read the one. It was the advertisement for an encyclopedia for future times, because encyclopedia information changes so quickly now that even if you republish the edits every day, every hour, you still would be behind the times. And so the direction that this company that wrote this encyclopedia that was being advertised in its introduction had perfected a series of future anticipation, so that their encyclopedia was written with the future in mind, and they predicted what the entries were going to be in the encyclopedia. And all you needed to do was you have this like magnetotome, and you would just say the thing you wanted, hold out your right hand. It has to be your right, because if it was your left, the book would come and hit you in the head. Oh dear. And I'm reading this going, I wonder if I could actually pull off reading this out loud with a really deadpan expression, because it's unbelievably funny with capital letters, and say, if I point my finger, that's the capitalized thing, and if I do this, it means that. So just like, kind of like a sort of like a comedy routine, but I don't think I could pull it off. Anyone thinking about that?
Yeah, well, by the time this gets posted, you've either done it or you haven't done it.
Except now you see, you suggested Taschen and the math
Yes.
book. Oh, but I should wait on the math. I should wait on those until after you publish, because then I'm kind of like giving away a couple of my little things, although not with Taschen, because what's not to like about a Taschen video? I don't know. The reading thing actually takes precedent, and this next couple of weeks, I don't get to do very many daytime like weekday videos, because work is pretty consuming right now, and I'm getting ready for I'm getting ready for a little skeletal improvement. I'm going to be having bilateral full knee replacements come the end of August, and yeah, so I may have a little bit more daytime. People may not want to hear what I have to say, because I understand they give you lots of really good drugs so that you can get through your first week or two. But I'll be off work for a couple of weeks, recovering from having 2 new knees put in.
Well, good luck with that, and yeah, because that will. I'm just expecting this to come out late August, so it'll be sometime.
Oh, just in time for my birthday! La! Nice, and I'm looking forward to it. Actually, I think that everybody is now greeting your suggestion. Oh, would you like to be in my desert island? I thought you'd never ask.
Yeah.
So I think what's going to happen with my channel is I'm really enjoying reading. And Book Time with Elvis. I'm loving his really calming reading, and I love Jane Austen. So I'm really enjoying his reading out loud. It reminds me of when I was a kid and my mother would read to us all. It was the only peaceful, quiet time in our household all day. When she would read from anything from Homer's The Odyssey to Charles Dickens to fairy tales, and just that the sound of somebody reading out loud is just so unbelievably wonderful and soothing. So I thought, maybe instead of doing the comedy routine, maybe I would find something that I really enjoy, and some short things that I could read, or I don't know if I would want to do a serial thing, but to kind of split that between talking about what I'm reading or what I'd like to read. I think book acquisition has got to slow down for a while after my last 2 very extravagant expeditions into antiquarian bookland.
Yes, they were nice acquisitions.
Oh yeah, well, so I may actually spend a little time with the YouTube anyway. Well, reading them, but also kind of showing some of them, because maybe not just going like 1, 2, 3, 4, but just enjoying them. Like, oh, my first edition, Gene Wolfe, The Sorcerer's House, was signed and inscribed to his editor. Wow, I know you're not really big on the modern sci-fi fantasy writers, but Gene Wolfe.
Yeah, but I do like Gene Wolfe.
And this one. So Tim Powers called this the best fantasy novel in the world, and I'd read a bit of that and show it, because that was I got that at the Antiquarian Fair. And some sci-fi books are very expensive to get that way, but all things considered, it was pretty reasonable, and I got some other really tasty treats. So yeah, who knows? Might be that. Yeah. Read the books I have, like they say. Read the books I haven't. Stop trying to get more.
No, this has been really great. I've really enjoyed this. So stick around, because I'm going to. I'll see if I can find that Burton.
Okay, sure.
Burton's library.
Then I will say thank you very much for inviting me to your Desert Island book series.
Bye, everybody. We'll be back next week with a new Castaway. This island's going to get full. Oh no, actually, it's multi-dimensional island. That's what it is. It's a everybody goes into a different dimension. See you next time, BookTube.
Bye-bye.